For this week's art activity, we're going to be making some fantasy flamingos. Our flamingos will be based on a style of art called surrealism. In surrealist art, realistic images and imaginary images are put together in a drawing or painting or collage to create a scene that comes from fantasy. So our flamingos, we're going to draw them realistically, but we're going to put them in a scene full of details that would be more fantasy-like, where you normally wouldn't see a flamingo. So you guys get to choose, after we draw the flamingo together, what kind of imaginary activity or scene you would like your flamingo to be in, creating your own surrealist fantasy flamingo drawing. What you need for this project is a piece of white paper, any size will do. You need a pencil for drawing, an eraser in case you make a mistake. If you would like to outline your drawing before you color, you need a black marker of some kind. And for coloring, crayons and markers will work perfectly fine. If you want to try some colored pencils, of course you can do that also. So let's grab our materials and get started on our fantasy flamingos. Okay, so before we can get to the fantasy part of our drawing, we need to draw the flamingo first. We do want the flamingo to look realistic, so we're going to draw it together step by step, and we want it to be the focal point of our picture, or the main part of our picture, so we're going to draw it nice and big in the center of our paper. You're going to want to take your white paper and turn it vertical, straight up and down. Now, unless you have an idea for your imaginary scene that requires you to have it horizontal across because you need more space, vertical is going to be the best bet for this drawing because it gives you enough room to make the long legs for your flamingo and still have space to draw the body, the neck, and the head. So vertical is probably your best bet for drawing. Once you have your paper turned, you're going to grab your pencil. I'm using a marker just so you guys can see, but remember you should use a pencil so that you can erase if you make a mistake. And we're going to actually find our starting point before we begin anything. So I'm going to take my finger and I'm going to look for the center of my paper. And once I have the center of my paper, I'm actually going to move it over a little bit to the side because we're going to begin with the beak of the flamingo, and the beak is more towards the side of the head, not directly in the middle. Once you have your finger in the correct spot, make a little dot for your starting point so you don't forget where to begin. Now the beak of the flamingo is curved up top and pointed on the bottom. So I'm going to put my pencil right on that dot and I'm going to curve down. I'm going to go right where I ended and I'm going to curve back up to the starting spot. The bottom of the beak should look like it has a point, like the letter V. If it looks a little too rounded, you're going to want to erase that and make it more pointed before you go forward. I'm going to put my pencil right on that dot and I'm going to split my beak in half with a line down the middle so I now have the top and the bottom of the beak, so that if you were to open it up, you would see the top and bottom. Now, the tip of a flamingo's beak, or the very end, is black while the rest is pink. So I like to make a little curved line so that I don't forget to color it in black later on. So I'll make two little curves, leave a little space towards the end, and I'll remember to color that black while the rest gets colored in pink. Now that we have the beak, we can make the head of our flamingo. So I'm going to go more towards the top, a little to the side, right at the edge of the beak, and I'm going to start by making what would be a circle, but I'm not going to close it, not all the way around. I'm going to go to the bottom of the beak, the other side, and I'm going to continue that circle, but again, I'm not going to close it. I'm going to leave a space open so that I have a place to start the neck. Now a flamingo has a very long, tall neck, so I'm going to go right where my first line ended, and I'm going to curve it down towards the middle of the page. If that line looks a little too short, you just want to make it a little longer. It should go past the beak. If it looks a little too long, just take your eraser and erase it so it's a little shorter. Remember, you still have to make the body of your flamingo, and you need the space. I'm going to go back to the second line, and I'm going to go right down and try my best to match up with the first line that I made. If one looks a little shorter, you just make it a little longer, and vice versa. Remember, we should always be checking our drawings after every step And if something looks a little bit off or a little bit too short or a little bit too small, we fix it before we move on. All right, let's start the body. Now I'm gonna take a line and I'm gonna connect those two edges of the neck to start the body. And I'm gonna make that line keep going so that it curves around. Again, like I'm making a circle, but not closing it. I'm gonna go back to the top and extend that line so that it's longer. I'm gonna go back to the bottom and I'm gonna curve it up. It's almost as if you're making a raindrop or a teardrop shape. But I didn't close the end because I wanna make it look like feathers, so I'll close it with a zigzag. Remember, you can't be wrong with a zigzag. It's just in and out, like the top of a mountain. I'm gonna give him its wings. So inside I'll put the first wing and I'll make a wavy line. 1, 2, 3. And I'm gonna make the other wing coming out. So I'm gonna go to the edge of the body, make a line that comes out, and then make a curve. 1, 2, 3. I like to draw the wings so that one is open and one is closed. If you want the wings to be in a different way, maybe you decide that your idea, you need the wings to be up or you need them both to be down, you could always go back and change it later. That's why you guys use a pencil. You can erase it and you can draw it a little bit different. The only thing you would do is just make the line for the wing in the direction where you'd want it to go. If you needed to come down, you draw the line down. If you needed to come up, you would draw the line coming up. Just remember, a flamingo has only 2 wings. So we need to make the tall legs for our flamingo. So I'm gonna make 2 tall straight lines coming down towards the bottom of the paper. And I like to make the feet or the webbed feet very simple. Just kind of like 3 little lines like that. Usually when flamingos stand, they have one leg down and one leg up that's either bent in this direction or crossed over. I'm gonna show you how to make the one to cross behind the other leg. So I'll leave a little space, make the line bend, stop when you hit the first, pick up where you leave off, draw it one more time so it's thicker, and then add the webbed foot. So that's it. And to finish it off, I go right back to the top of the head and I'm gonna give my flamingo a nice circle colored in for the eye. Again, if you have a different idea for the eye, you can change it. I'm gonna just make a simple one for you with the dot. And there you have the basic shape of your flamingo. Now that we have the flamingo done, now you get to decide what kind of fantasy and imaginary ideas and scene you want to create for your flamingo. What do you want it to be doing? Where would you like it to be? So a few ideas that I came up with. And remember, this should be surreal or dreamlike. So I don't want to draw my flamingo where I would normally see a flamingo, where the weather is warm, where there is water, where there's sand and a beach or palm trees. Think of really hot tropical weather. That's where you would normally find a flamingo. That would be realistic. Since I want this to be surreal, I want it to be a scene that's imaginary or fantasy-like. So I gotta put my flamingo somewhere completely different than where it would be in real life. So my first idea was you would never see a flamingo in the cold weather. So what if I put him ice skating in a winter scene? And I gave him a scarf, and I gave him earmuffs, and I made some little ice for him to be ice skating with the snow and the nighttime sky and the trees in the background. And of course, I gave him a little hot cocoa, his little Starbucks cup that he's drinking. That's a scene where you would normally not see a flamingo in the cold weather. I could also think completely outside the box and put my flamingo doing something funny that it wouldn't normally be doing. So here's my flamingo in his art studio, painting a little tropical scene with a little paint palette, and I gave him a little beret on top of his head. And he's got all his art supplies on the shelf. You normally wouldn't see a flamingo painting a picture, so that would be a surreal or fantasy scene to create. So before you start drawing, what you need to do is you need to come up with your idea. So do a little brainstorming, think about what you want your flamingo to be doing, where it would like it to be, and then you can figure out how to draw it and put it together. So brainstorm for a second, and I'm gonna brainstorm too, and then I'll show you how you can put your idea on your paper. So watch, and you'll see. Okay, so I took a moment and I brainstormed a scene where you normally wouldn't find a flamingo. Again, I decided, well, he wouldn't be out making a snowman in the winter, so maybe that would be a great place to put him. So I started by making the wavy line for the ground for the snow, and I put the snowman next to the flamingo and gave him a little snowball in his hand because he's building him step by step. And then I wanted to put something further away in the background, so I made a second ground line, because remember, you can't have anything floating in the air in your picture. Things need to be grounded. So I needed to make another snowy ground line in order to put some trees and the house in the background. And because it's further away, I made them smaller than everything that's closer in the picture. So the house is smaller than the snowman and the flamingo because it's further away in the background. And I added some snow on top of the trees and some snow falling from the sky, and gave him his winter hat and scarf to try to keep him a little bit warm while he's outside making his snowman on a snowy day. So that would be an imaginary scene that you could put your flamingo in. And it doesn't have to be winter. It could be maybe playing soccer or playing football, or maybe doing ballet or gymnastics or singing on a stage with a microphone. It's up to you. There's endless creative possibilities of where you could put your fantasy flamingos, because it's exactly that, fantasy, coming from your own imagination. Remember, when you hit something when you draw for overlapping, we stop and we pick up where we leave off. We don't draw through anything, right? I didn't draw through the flamingo's head. I stopped and picked up on the other side. Remember to always make your ground lines and make sure that if it's further away in your picture, it's a little bit smaller than anything that's up close. Once you have everything drawn with your pencil, if you want to outline with a black marker, go right ahead. That's up to you. And then you can color in your picture neatly and completely. I just used crayons and a little bit of markers to color in my pictures. If you want to go a little bit more creative and try some colored pencils or paint, that's up to you, but crayons work perfectly fine. Remember, a flamingo is pink, and the only thing that's not pink is the little tip, which is black on the beak. And take your time with your coloring. Make sure you take your time and make work that you are proud of, all right? And get as creative as you want with your fantasy flamingos. I can't wait to see what they look like when they are all done. Good luck, artists.